So, first, I think it's important for many of you who haven't experienced plenum model of discussion and work to see a short reminder of what plenum means in our local context. Here, Igor Štiks, our colleague, used to work within this model of plenum during the 2009 student protests in Zagreb. Just a few years afterwards, in Belgrade, Faculty of Philosophy and Faculty of Philology and Belgrade University also had student protests that use this form of discussions. So, a short reminder, again, with Ozgi could help us in reading those images now with this time distance. Short reminder what we have as documents of those previous plenums that determined our current first association to, when we say plenum, what do we think? Although the plenum as an expression was very used in socialist Yugoslavia and so on, but now the younger generation, yes, in our center, inspired by those movements in 2000s, we also used plenum in a variety of projects, different topics, but what plenum now means is, for younger generations, what it was given as a meaning by those student movements in Belgrade, Zagreb, Skopje, and post-Yugoslav region. So, just a very short reminder, and Igor can then explain a bit more.
Yeah, so I would ask, in order to get a bit of a circular thing, that when you speak, then you come here and stay here. So that way you can't really hide up there. So what you show, of course, what we were missing, those are the scenes from the plenum itself, and people discuss and then vote together. And I also recommend you to see the documentary by Igor Bezinovic called The Blockade, Blokada. and there is also another documentary by Saša Ban called The Land of Knowledge about student movement in Zagreb in 2009 that kick-started many of things that we today could brand as progressive new social movements, who are, among other things, experimenting with horizontal democracy in self-organized plenums. As we know, plenum is the word that has a heritage in socialism as well. Plenum, plenary assembly, therefore plenum of workers in self-managed factories. So, or the plenum of the Communist Party of Yugoslavia, fourth plenum, fifth plenum, quite important event. So when the word was used in Zagreb, it brought all these memories back. And somehow we thought it would be rejected by everyone as a communist thing, but actually it just spread. So everybody now uses plenum, which is actually great. And one has to also know that this, so there was Zagreb, Belgrade, most recently Skopje, with the occupation of University of Skopje, and with declaration of autonomous zone and plenum. There was a plenum of students, plenum of professors, and so on. I would say that from what I saw, that every time these occupations happen, the plenum model was more perfect in a way, was perfected by experience, and I think that the Skopje one was quite elaborated, and also influenced the movement and the so-called colorful revolution as well. We are not going to forget all the plenums in Bosnian cities, which was another experience. As again, we mentioned before, it's one thing to just have students and professors who are anyhow spending time at their universities. It's another thing to have, so to speak, regular citizens. And this is why it was, that brings also a lot of complexities with it. If you have students, most of them studying social sciences, who have some ideas about horizontality, it's much more easier in a way to operate. But when you have people who have no experience of citizens' assembly and who are just there to voice their anger and pain, then you get a different situation. Anyhow, it was remarkable to see that in 20 cities, citizens' assembly or the plenums actually work for more than a month. In some smaller Bosnian cities, they still exist. Those that did survive are those when the plenum started having different functions, for instance, social aid and care, where they actually started raising the social concerns and then pressurizing local governments to do something, such as in a city of Gračanica near Tuzla in northern Bosnia. So this gives you also an idea that plenum has to evolve, that of course, very often it will stop, it will not last forever. If it lasts forever, then it's a dual power, then it's a revolution. We hope for that. But it was difficult to expect this to happen now, but maybe it will happen in the future. Now, this introduction just to say that we decided, organizer decided to organize a plenum among everyone who will show up. Of course, this is not that type of plenum. We are just using the form. This is a plenary open discussion. However, let's retain some rules. I think we should be concise, not too long, and that we should respond to the questions we are asking ourselves today, which is basically what is to be done. So probably we don't need more examples, we don't need more theory, we don't need more analysis, just simple things. What is to be done and whether we can agree about that. So we'll see that. But before we start, we have 3 groups work today on the questions of successes of social movements, on the question of solidarity, and on the question of electoral politics or elections or representative democracy, and what is our position vis-a-vis these issues. So I will invite first Florent to give us a couple of bullet points from this morning's discussion.
So I have the bullet point reports from the 3 groups, which are really just to give some key ideas. It does not pretend to reflect the discussions. We had the working group about the issue of the solidarity between us, who can build the solidarity. So 6 points. The first one is that the communication between us improves information of everyone and improves understanding of what's going on. The international solidarity brings moral support for the people being active, and it also increases their credibility, their legitimacy of the actions they are carrying out or protest. The international solidarity, it disturbs the dominant consensus, but everyone is there with their own problem. It's a signal that we are organizing, that we are connected. To have international solidarity, we have a need for personal connections, for physical presence from time to time in other places, in other actions, for building trust between each other. International solidarity can bring local difficulties to the people doing it, because the issue, the struggle they want to support has resonance in their own context, and means they are bringing to themselves new problems, basically. And lastly, even small solidarity actions that look like nothing when you are doing it, it can be really significant for the people, activist movements benefiting from this solidarity.
Very good, thank you very much. So what's the second report, Philip? Is it on successes or?
I have printed them all here, they are here. So.
Okay, Philip should come and tell us.
Alliances of various groups, lawyer support.
You can explain it a bit.
So we realized that what should be the strategies for successful initiative. So we should make alliances of various groups, not only civic initiatives, maybe parties, different stakeholders, individuals, famous people, and in the communities, local and wider community. Then lawyer support. We think it's very important to have activist lawyers who will be all the time with us, not only to engage them when there is some problem. Hope it's very hard, but just Solidarity Fund. One of the good examples with Colorful Revolution is that we managed, because many people got fines for coloring the buildings. So we made one Solidarity Fund, and I don't know, for one day we collect around 15,000 euros for helping of the people. A structure coordinated daily activities for the protest. It's very important to have coordinations, structured coordinations of the activity, just to have focus plan. And for example, we have coordinated activities regarding the route of the moving of the people and things like that. Mobilization by mass actions. Informing the people of the laws, causes of protest in a comprehensive way. It's also important we made leaflets, posters, informing the peoples of their rights and spreading them through social media and on some very cheap printed materials. Work in micro-communities, mesni zajednici, it's called like, that was one of the ideas of more successful mobilization, to start to take back these micro-communities, these mesni zajednici, because the example in Macedonia is that the previous party really captured that micro-communities and uses for party activities. So we think that that is one of the ways of this grassroots organization to be successful. Aesthetics, art activism is very important. So the experience is that a lot of artists we were involved in all these protests, and it helped to not to aestheticize the protest, but to give the protest more, identity, more visual identity, and in a performative way, and to make the actions more successful. Yes. For example, for defending of City Trade Center, we make, because they wanted to make facade of Baroque, we make a wall of citizens around the building. And we estimated that we need...
Human chain, yeah. Human chain.
Human chain. We estimated that we need 2,200 people for one circle. We made 3 circles. So it was really, really powerful image. Instigating. Huh? Yes, instigate the public debate through the strong public announcement, even without big number of initial protest group. Work in the local communities, activists move to the areas in question to help locals in resisting practices. Mm-hmm. So that was some kind of bullets that we think very important.
Thank you very much. And the third one was about the elections. Mattia is presenting the suggestions for discussion.
Yeah, okay, so we were basically discussing the possibility of protest movements turning it into some sort of political formations, such as political parties, and contesting the elections. So what were pros and cons, etc. So like the topic is obviously pretty broad and not. We weren't really able to come to some very specific conclusions and have an in-depth debate, but we exchanged some experiences of like some practical experiences from the recent past and some possible things that came out of this debate were such. So point one, maintaining a dynamic relationship between movement and the party. That was like kind of a common conclusion that even if there were to be a formation of a political organization, it needs to remain rooted within the movement and not distance itself. Second point was that it's not ethical to co-opt a social movement in the creation of a party, which was a Romanian experience, or their kind of a strategic decision that they made while forming a party that they thought it weren't ethical to basically use the infrastructure of the movement which they were coming out of, rather than try and make something on their own, but based on their previous experience. Point three, issue of protest voters and volatility of voters. So that was basically part of the discussion where we were discussing the potential, so to say, audience, or those who we address with our politics in the present context. Moving on, going from movement to civic list in election without dilution in a coalition. Case of Zagreb. So the recent experience of Zagreb elections and of how to actually form a coalition of different groups dealing possibly with different issues, but trying to challenge the establishment rule on a local level. Risk of becoming absorbed by the system and cut off from grassroots organizing. Case of Slovenia, which was the case of IDS, and the debate around the cons of engaging in electoral politics while possibly not having enough cadres or human resources, in whichever terminology you'd prefer, but like enough people to keep on doing the grassroots work as well as engaging in the parliamentary activity. Another point, possibility to keep alive party-movement relationship. Case of Barcelona. Okay, so the local Podemos experience of trying to overcome this challenge of distancing between the party and the grassroots movement, the from below movement, once elected in government. And the last point, tactical opportunities to consider, because goal must be to achieve results to convince voters again. So this kind of, we just briefly touched upon the question of what can be achieved and in which manner once elected, not necessarily even elected on a win ballot, but rather just elected into an official representative institution. But so I guess that's it from our discussing group.
Thank you. You can sit wherever you want. Well, so if I can summarize the summary, I mean, we are clearly talking about very, very similar issues here. Point number one, there's been some successes of progressive or even left movements or actions, and therefore we should be proud of that and learn from that. So that's quite good. Not only talk about failures, there have been many more failures, but doesn't matter. There are clearly some strategies that could pay off and could be good. The question is then also about what kind of successes are we talking here? Are we talking about successes of movements that were eventually, like in Macedonia, you were mentioning Macedonian case, where movements put so much pressure that allowed long-established party to finally capture the government and to change the oppressive authoritarian regime. So clearly in every local context we're going to have various strategies how to achieve this dynamic relationship between movements, established party, unions, and different social actors to achieve one goal. One goal in Macedonia was a regime change, and it did happen now, but now it will have its own contradictions where, again, the role of movements will be quite important, I believe. The second thing about solidarity is everybody agrees that it's not like we need more solidarity. We need quite a specific solidarity, which doesn't come, as we all agree, with the clicks on internet, but actually with the direct contacts among people and with physical presence. That's quite important. Physical presence on streets, squares, travels, and contacts between various actors that then could really have a fruitful and effective solidarity campaigns. However, all of this is easier said than done. Now, it seems to me, and we are talking just after the UK elections, that the question of elections will remain quite a controversial one. It seems that there is a fear of movements and especially progressive groups that they will be corrupted by the system, or that their energy will be simply taken from them or simply used to propel some regular players from the political elite to power. And once you get to the power, the Syriza case, you then face the reality of power relations in a globalized world. And there's a lot of contradictions and problems there, but somehow it seems to me, and this is open for a debate, that people, many people who were part of the Plenum horizontal movements, people who were part of Occupy movement, are ready to engage in some kind of electoral struggles. And we got some good examples in the Balkans, such as recently in Zagreb, and it seems that this brings us to another question that I will ask you to reflect, which is at what level should we engage? And it seems that there is a potential, strong potential, at engaging at municipal and city level for successful mobilizations rather than at the national level, or the engagement at the national level, it's a different ballgame. So I will invite you now to reflect on these points. Feel free to say what you want, but of course, let's concentrate on these points to have a productive discussion. The floor is open.
Okay, you know this game, it's the first one. We have to sacrifice one, and then it's easy and it goes. I'm going to designate a victim. The rule is if you speak, you come, and then you stay, and in the end we'll all be together in a nice
circle. A bit closer. Because we feel a bit as a panel, which is not the idea.
Yeah, we should be together. Really, you can sit on the nice comfy chair,
you can
but
of course reject this offer, and yeah, you're free to choose.
I think one of the question for all decision mobilization movement is the question of the scale. At which level can we supposed to be? Of course, we couldn't foreseen, but we can think in a way, and at which moment we think we are pertinent, and which level we can, make pressure on the reality, change the reality, and that's very. Because this morning we got a debate and something was in direction of the planet, universe. Okay, so it's maybe make pleasure, but in reality the fall is hard. So that's the key question to each movement. One can, even with the feeling of winning something, and not always to face this contradiction. And so how we find the objective, how can we win, and how can we say, not compromission, but we say, well, this is a start for this moment, and then will be another fight for other subjects. And any movement, just like close this, any movements we have to think about. On which level are we about mobilization, the objective, and so on.
So my question would be, just to have this type of discussion, what do you think would be the most productive strategy? Of course, every context.
It depends on the context, because if you've seen all this situation, we can sometimes the weak points could be on the top of one state. For instance, question of corruption. If you find some contradiction, and sometimes it's totally when the level. If we speak about corruption, which seems to me one of the most shared reality in all the world. Even any level of corruption, but say something was totally joined to the capitalism system today. So the faiblesse, the weak points, the weakness points, you cannot know before. So I think for me, what we have to think it's the development of the movement to the roots of the movement. So it could be, it depends on the context. Maybe it's not, it's more realistic than so. Because if you say today, well, I want to make a global revolution, I say, okay, you can think that, but not for tomorrow. But if you, for in France, we think that maybe all the parliament place or government place, not a main objective, but maybe on the cities, in different cities, in one objective. But also it's with the French context, because we were discussing about what is how the idea of the common, the commons, say, became a consensus reality. And in France, actually, there are some objects or about the commons, objective common sharing thing is very deeply in the French society, which in the Balkan is not quite the thing, because well, maybe, I'm not a specialist, so sorry if I make some mistake, but we became, you are from a society who all supposed to be collective organization. And then it fall, and now the society is reorganizing itself, but the mainstream is more individual, liberal, capitalism, salvage, and so on. So at what time people have the feeling that this common interest, the collective interest, is vital for their own life and so on. So it depends of each context. And for instance, maybe I have ideas about the fight about the garden in courtyard and so on. So there are no, any object can be a pressure, and if you go forward in the meaning of collective fight to make the things better.
Other thoughts? Borka?
A little bit summarize that we already talked. Jel me čujete? Okay. Obviously, the movements are rising because the parties are not in a capacity to solve the political problems. I mean, the reality is out of the hand of the political authorities. We have a certain historical experience toward the problem. The parties are alienated and everything that what we notice. The division between rich and poor is enormous. And this is obvious one of the most important reasons due to the different exploration. It is on the level of the beginning, 1813, the time of Dickens. You have such division between rich and poor people, extremely rich. And now, the question is what we discussed already in the afternoon. If we accept the Convention of Parliamentary Democracy, this is one way of thinking. And inside of that, if we accept that, then it's a question of collaboration of the parties and of the movements. It depends on the political statement. This is the methods that you are against the system of that the parties are in charge for the political life, and then you have a certain shape of the revolutions. I don't agree at all that it is so particularly for certain Balkan is a that and France is a this. The European problem in this moment, together with the United States, is the right wing. And this is something what is very something what the movement has to be against, our movement, I mean. Therefore we are gathering, because that's obviously that in Europe, together now in the United States, are rising the strengths on the level of the 30s, and that we are all facing the reality which is more and more complicated and needs some goals. And then it depends on the goals of the particular surrounding. And that goals will define, should the movement participate with the party or not. It depends what you want. And now it's in question, what are our mutual utopia or goals, or what do we want to do? And this is for me, your target, your goal, your aim is defining what you are doing operatively in politics, isn't that? So I think that we have to talk about this, what is leading us toward the suppressing the right wing, and in some way get the new ideas about how the left or humanistic position can, what are our goals to develop that kind of organization and unification between us. What are our, what we want to do. And that will define, should I be with this party or with this party, or accept this collaboration or collaboration. I mean this cooperation. Sorry, but exactly I said what it is true. So this is for me a question. What is our belief? I mean, what is why we are gathering? I mean, and that will define what strategy we have. That means we have to aim and strategy, and this is a tactic then. And the question of the political negotiation. Obviously, this enormous politicization of the citizens brought some in the front of a question how we can organize toward the goals, this spontaneous internet, because it's obviously that it appears and gone, appears and gone, appears and gone. And it's very nice to look at such things. This is absolute motivation. The rebellion is always motivation. I mean, this is exciting, my goodness sake. And we are all alive where we are demonstrating, isn't that? And this is that situation. The protest brings life. And therefore we are talking about that. And then comes the other things. But first, we have that to define what are the circumstances for that life. I mean, this is the energy which may change something, and we all are present that it is that now we have teachers and people from educations. Today it will be in Lawyers' Comora, the scandal. Afterwards are the students, but now why we are not together in one moment? And this is the question for me.
Okay. Yes, I think I would put the things a little bit differently. Well, I agree with the necessity to elaborate the beliefs and the project, but I think that I would think that the level of municipality or the level of concrete resistance to one public policy, as in the film about higher education, for example, about something else, is a good example of how you can bring people together without having all in common at the beginning, without defining before a global ideology, a global philosophy, because I think otherwise we just can't we can't reach anything. Well, I don't know, I have a small experience of having doing with people in a small town, suburb of Paris, citizen list, electoral list for the municipal elections a few years ago. And so how you can just go from one flat to another flat, speaking to the people, try to convince them that you are. It's not by, I think that it's not by having a very big ideology and a big project. It's by beginning to starting with the concrete day-to-day preoccupation of the people, not being demagogic, not being so clearly announcing what are your objectives if you, by chance, you would be elected at the municipality. So in which direction you want to be, more social policy, more equality, more public discussion, more involving of citizens, and so on and so forth. And so I think by doing this you can I wouldn't say, well, we didn't win, but we had like 27% of the votes, which was not so bad. And people were quite, were quite talkative and were ready to hear, and were very happy that people were coming to them and talk to them and got interested in their everyday concerns about public transportation, about, of course, these people can have really a kind of, very wide concerns, and of course, as a citizen, as a committed citizen, you can't have an answer to the concerns of the citizens. But the simple fact that you are talking to them, that you are listening to them, and that you can, at least for some of these concerns, elaborate a kind of response and a kind of possible response, concrete response to this problem, can to my experience, can bring people back, I would say, into participation. And well, so I would really be at this maybe quite slow, low level, but I think it's in our context, and maybe for the perspective of next municipal elections in France, so in 2020, this is maybe what is at stake.
So we have, just for the sake of discussion, I'll simplify what's been said here. We have on one hand the idea that we need the vision of what we want to achieve. On the other hand, we have the idea that we should go with single issue strategies, or at the local level, or the strategies that people are gonna unite around and see it as issues that have that are quite concrete, and that the successes could be seen immediately, or that the issues could be solved by citizens' action, without necessarily having an umbrella ideology or the idea how we're going to do it. Of course, these things could be combined. For instance, the good example is the Italian, was it a referendum on water, or which clearly was a huge success, but that idea was that water should not be commercialized, education should not be commercial, so it has a wider appeal. Yeah.
Sorry, like we have three examples. Vaccine, Skopje, Belgrade on the water, which start from ecological.
From the idea of the commons, so it's keep coming back. Okay,
yeah, I'll just add on a strategy from the local level, because for me it's very important part, and as you said at the beginning in the points, that especially here in the Balkans, with each protests we have more and more new ideas, and they became more proficient and better organized. So I had the idea of the last protest, which happened in bigger cities in Serbia, after the presidential elections, and that students who organized that, who lead it, and there also was a group, so-called 7 Demands, who actually profiled seven demands of the protest. I believe that I would agree with them that social issues are very important in a sense of de-elitization of the politics and of including, actually getting back regular citizens and actually who we are. If we speak about ourselves like this small group here who should like tell people what to do, then we are also part of the elite. But if we include people with the real issues from the daily problems, then actually we are giving a life to politics. So my idea actually for the next elections and protests is actually that we should put our demands before the elections, and actually that citizens are the ones who are putting the discourse. Who are okay? That's something what we should achieve. But I'm just like speaking in the progress of the different protests. But actually, that citizens are those who are putting the issues, and then we have political elites who are competing. What solution they're gonna offer for that, and we can see how that's gonna develop in institutional and ideological level.
Matija, and okay, who was first? I didn't. Yeah.
So maybe I will breach the rules that you put as a part of this assembly. But so let's start. You said when you summarize the summary of the summary. Yeah? Okay. So you said that we need to have the clear vision what we want. So then I will be probably a little bit conservative in the room. I would say that we also need to recognize the reality, especially the reality of our capacities when we speak what we want to do. So the good thing about the protests is actually that every protest is a possibility for those people that are participating to talk about the issues that brought them to the streets, and then through that kind of interaction you try to define what is the problem and what could be the solution. So basically and then if we want to really depict our capacities, then we need to look on all of the protests that happened in the last years and to see whether there was a clear actor that actually were pushing the agenda and then waited for a proper opportunity when the citizens recognized and got into the streets, or protest was some kind of spontaneous heterogeneous reactions of citizens, which I think it is the case of the protest after the presidential elections. And then we should look on those groups that tried then to capture that situation and to continue with the organization of the protest, actually to recognize it that it's an agent that still do not exist, that is going to constitutionalize itself. And that's the good thing. I mean, so basically then that organization of collective whatever is somebody who is in the process of constitutionalization and needs then to continue with, pushing the agenda, focusing on few issues for which it has capacities. For instance, for when we speak about some of the students' organizations, it could be, for instance, to defend the healthcare system, which is under attack of the privatization, or to defend the housing rights of the people that are under attack, because we do not have capacities for wider and strong movement that will have from the beginning a very wide and comprehensive political agenda. And for other thing, I think that we should also, if we want to consider what is reality, stop using the term movement in the Balkans, because maybe I'm old-fashioned in political theory, but we don't have a movement. neither I mean, a small sparkle for something that we could call movement. Here we have various collectives, groups of people up to 10, 50, 20, or initiatives, no movement.
Yeah, I would completely agree with you on this one. You know, like substitutionism and these kind of promises to ourselves that we're bigger than we are. But yeah, I mean, it's a big dilemma. Like, how do you find a measure between the vision that is on offer, like that you put out? Because if we're coming from radical and or revolutionary left, it's kind of too easy to talk about like maximalist goals, especially since this new left is kind of coming more from the universities rather than from the workplaces as used to be the case when the left and the labor movement were actually massive. But it's also, but there's also this pull from the other side to kind of try and moderate your language and focus strictly on stuff that seem doable or achievable or whatever. And then there's this other thing that we mentioned a couple of times in these 2 days, and that is that we've usually been fighting the defensive struggles. So there's this specific limitation to what we can do, and it usually comes against the fact that we do not have a political party to represent our demands on those levels of society on which currently have the mandate to decide. Okay, so we can advocate or do these various make this various kinds of pressure from which is like what, from lobbying to mass movements and occupations and whatever, but we do not have the power to directly to decide. And I think that the role of plenums is could be very important in this process. I mean, like the first time that they appeared in the area was basically in 2006, during the first occupations, the faculty occupations in Belgrade, the occupational philosophy faculty, and well, speaking from a position of like maybe 15 people who started the whole this whole initiative, our idea was as such: like, we don't have a student organization which is like a fighting, active organization. We come from a revolutionary left collective, which is kind of a coalition of different types of, from anarchists to Maoists to Trotskyists to us who were basically first-year sociology students and had no clue about politics other than we are like revolutionary left, okay? So the idea was like, okay, so like no one has the legitimacy, we have this issue of rising tuition fees, something needs to be done. So what tool are we going to propose to do it? Well, let's organize plenary assemblies where everyone will have the right to speak and vote, everyone's equal in the space. This is kind of we started creating this emancipatory space that can give people the chance to be active on this specific issue that we previously thought that people might want to be active around. Okay, so I think that part of our goal, like something that we must not lose sight of, is actually creating the emancipatory space for people to join politics and to self-organize. I think this is important on this level, but also on level of basically gaining legitimacy for your final vision, your ultimate vision, like the vision of socialism, probably in the case of most of us. So like you don't go around and say, okay, yeah, I come from the revolutionary left, but we don't go around saying we need a revolution, we need a revolution. Like, you can say that any time of day. It won't make any change. Like, you can speak about revolution, about general strike, but like there needs to be like some specific conditions. We don't have them, but we have this idea of like one of my like strategically most favorite political idea of creating facts on the ground, trying to grasp this one thing that you can find in the current situation, which if you attack it and change it, will create conditions for this next thing that you want to do. Okay, so I think that this plenary assembly kind of thing is very useful for that in our circumstances. But and this is the last thing, it does not grow on its own. Like in Belgrade, I think like the best plenums we've had were in 2006, and then they developed in Zagreb, pretty much so. And then when we occupied in 2011, especially on philology faculty, it was a disaster. Look, it's a tool of struggle. It's where we organize our fight. But it kind of became enough that you have direct democracy and everyone can do anything. It's like this story of, like, we need more referendums, we need to ease the laws on referendums. Well, I mean, and then they say, well, there's Switzerland, that's much better than here. Though they vote Islamophobic bullshit from time to time on their referendums. So it's not, like, it's still a form, it's a tool, it's something that can be used politically if you have injection of progressive politics within this context to actually, because we are kind of shaping opinions of one another when we're discussing, and it's also, so there's this parallel, I think, importance of building strong progressive political organizations, structures that intervene in political life, but that also create facts on the ground, that also create spaces for emancipation.
Okay. So I think that we have to gain the trust of people on the grassroots, and that's the only thing how we can do it is with work. You know, really work and then go on that level and give them a feeling that you are there for them. And that's, for my opinion, the most important thing. And that's actually the experience from the Plenum from Bosnia, because you have to go down with the rhetoric, what you are saying, that they could be understandable for them. Because if we are being on the academic level, you know, they actually don't understand it, you know. And for them, you know, to help them as much as you can. Also agreeing with the fact that on the level, and that means like kind of solidarity. Whatever problems that they have, we have to be there for them, even that we can't help them in lots of cases. That's the gaining the trust for them. And then maybe we can, it's a bad term for that, to use them and actually gain them, that we are going on a protest for something which could be useful for them. At the level of solidarity, actually, that's another thing. We saw it that on international level it's not working at all, and we saw it like on the Greece example, you know, that nobody was kind of unified on the level of European left that they can help them. So I don't know how to change it, but obviously we don't have a okay. Okay. So the experience from plenums is like to giving the people the space that they can talk, that they can address to you, that they can speak with you, that they are feeling that you are together with them on the same level, and that we are willing to help them. That's the kind of most important, again, thing. And from that point, we can go maybe further to develop the strategy, how we are supposed to deal with the lots of problems which we are facing in our society, and then maybe going on the level of the national level, because I'm really tired and sick and tired of like having the example in Živi Zid, for example, in Croatia, that they gain those people who will be like vanished from the flats because of the banks or those things, and those guys are obviously not having any agenda except the populist agenda, and we were not there. The left were not there to help them. And how do you think, you know, and that's a kind of, with it, like 100,000 people we are speaking about. Swiss credits also. Left is not doing anything left-oriented people is not doing anything with those people. And those are the people who are the most endangered. And they are accepting any help if you can provide them, even to be there, to protest. So that's the way how you are gaining the trust, how you are gaining the group of people who maybe you can start to work with them then. Yes, in which case, of course that you want to destroy the bank, but you have to help those people first, okay, give them the possibility, give them a shelter, give them, something, that you are kind of, you're not willing to accept the oppression of them. So that's why they have 3 people in the parliament who are complete idiots. But they are in the parliament, we are not. So I think those are the things what the left's supposed to do, not giving the great things, it will be this and that, because on the other side, right-oriented people are giving the solution, even they are false. They are not true, but they are giving the solution, they are lying to them, it will be better and doing. And we are on the level, we don't know what will happen. We are still debating. And that is continuous and continuous, and that's like 4 or 5 years at least, like that. And there are lots of things that you can do on the level of municipality, as you said, so then further on, like in every injustice, you have to participate to be on the side of people who are suppressed. So.
I agree, and it seems to me that in past few years there are some good examples how left initiatives, however they seem marginal or small now, at least in Serbia, do align with people in those smaller actions of defending evacuations, on aligning with some groups. But now that reminded me of a very successful attempt here during the project Naming It War. What left could do, even with our dilemmas on theoretical frames, approaches and methodologies, at least to shed light on how fragmented society is and how it is possible to connect some groups that never thought of horizontal aligning. For example, Naming It War showed how anti-war activists and war veterans and workers from the ruined factories, sometimes those groups overlap, especially veterans and workers, with students at the time rebellious at the faculties in occupation. If they align and start in this plenary form talking about the reasons of their horrible situations, they come to the same reason, actually, one big reason, which I wouldn't call right, it's capitalism. But anyway, it was a good example of how these left, let's say, initiatives or actions can work with, let's say, in the field. And that kind of horizon of solidarity, at least to open at the time, 5 years ago, it was still unseen and unthinkable. And today, I think it's also possible to conclude after the Belgrade protests that somehow people here, although it seems that this danger of right-wing appropriation of discontent of the people is threatening, I think there is a sense of, at least in the Balkans, we really had this very intensive, let's say, radiation, contamination of public discourse by right-wing and their populism. I think people are sick of that now. And first, I think in Bosnia, the plenum showed how easy it is for people, how in a way spontaneous it came in this plenum, the conclusion done with nationalism really scared the elites so much because they, in a way, expected it. I mean, nobody expected this false discourse to last so long. It had to be fueled so long. So I think it's really this close. It's really just an effort necessary to connect those groups that were deliberately kept apart and far in social structure and system for like decades here. And it takes really a small effort just to connect them. And they come to a common conclusion in the end. This experimental project here, yes. It was an enormous effort for one organization. If we think of a political front and some serious political organization on the level of a country or a region, it wouldn't be such an effort today. 10 years after, we can all see how those social groups share the same situation, actually caused by the same center, and wherever we put it. So maybe this solidarity we expect can be easily, let's say, evoked just by connecting groups that had no chance to work together. And that's what aligning different, heterogeneous aligning meant in our previous workshop, I think. Because there also, I remember Boris Budin a few days ago, said that those disillusioned people are there left alone. So Brexit, Trump, whoever took them, that's very right. And the disillusionment that came after this crisis is a potential because now it gives very tangible proof that there is a common cause, very tangible. And that's why, for the first time, although we had enormously long discussions about whether to participate in a corrupt system when it's in advance lost battle or whatever, maybe it is time now to think how to engage those people that are eager to see the results in their own political life and system. And this engagement, at least in Belgrade, after those protests, I'm almost sure that it's not that hard to defend this dissatisfied, potential dissatisfied people from the appropriation of the right. For 2 decades, I think it was here almost designated to be taken by the right populism because left was really autistic in dealing with itself. So, not for me.
So, again, a short summary. It seems to me that we are tending, a lot of people were mentioning grassroots, going to grassroots and actually doing something as opposed to defensive strategies. After all, this conference was called resistance. So it means you resist to something. It's not that you create conditions or, as Matthias mentioned, facts on the ground. And the idea that to create facts on the ground is actually to do what the left or progressives been always doing, going to the ground and helping people directly and concretely. But however, this of course brings 2 questions. One is the question of form, and it is clear that we are not fetishists as often accused of plenum democracy and only of plenum. It will work sometimes, it will produce brilliant results, and sometimes it won't. So it's a question what strategy you use, what is the exact form. Still in Bosnia there are still discussions whether protests should have continued on the streets, including burning buildings, or the decision to move to plenums was the right one. So clearly an open question. However, the question that was asked here, and it's definitely related to resistances, question of capacities. Capacities to resist, but also capacities to create a different reality. And whether we have this capacity to and how to change reality. It seems out of successes that the single issue mobilizations were quite successful. Anti-abortion law in Poland, anti-corruption protest against the law that was voted in Romania, So those are the things that for political system, when they're facing resistance, it's easy to actually backtrack. It's easy to simply say we are not going to pass this law. It would be a different situation if you put in danger the system as such. And then you're gonna see what we saw at Taksim, a lot of state violence that from Taksim continue towards the almost total violence and repression in Turkey. So, further thoughts? You wanted to say something, Philip? Philip says you.
Just to add, like, on the context of grassroots. I think very often the grassroots is romanticization of the grassroots. What I've learned in only 10 years every day protesting, there are a lot of initiatives, is that if you go in a political activism, it's a long process and very unpredictable process. So we should maybe, if we start to want some change, we first have to know that political activism is very slow process sometimes. It means that if it's very connected with the grassroots, so it means that if you start to work on grassroots, you have to be very conscious about the time that you have to spend in all these small communities and resources of power that you should give to them, which is sometimes very risky. So just like a comment, I wanted to say this. That's one thing, and the other, maybe we should focus more on this decentralization with local, as I said, local working groups on some concrete problems, especially working with workers and unions maybe, to help them to organize. For example, in Štip, but we started now, they are in the process of making a union, which is very big step. We will see how it will develop, but I think that if we want to show the example, we should give some of our power. Resource or real money, for example, I don't know, we have grant from USAID, and part of the production of my work I give to the workers. So that I show with example that it's possible. So I think this approach should be more often used, because this romanticizing of the grassroots sometimes is like making fetish of it. You know, it's like, that's my experience from Skopje context. Like part of the strategies, because not only big protests should be the. It always scares the government, but not only that. Maybe working with local communities who are silent can also make dangerous to these local communities. Somehow, I don't know. That's.
Anyone else?
Okay. I think that there might be, like, especially, I mean, or at least in case of Serbia, there's a specific impasse, kind of. Because, like, when you mentioned, like, okay, there's violence in Taksim and in some other circumstances. I mean, there's violence in Kosovo, like violent clashes, just a few hundred kilometers down from here. And in Belgrade, like, no protests have, like, any, like, there's no chance that there will be violence. Like, regime usually reacts by not even sending cops out. So, of course, in uniforms, but, like, you won't find, like, the riot gear cops in front of us. And it's kind of a question, why? So, like, if you take, for example, Turkish context or even the Kosovan context or the context of Macedonia, there's a clear connection between the movement and the specific political force that could topple the regime. Okay, so in Turkey you have various numbers of leftist parties, huge fighting tradition within the society, and whenever you have a movement, it is a potential problem for governance. Okay, so it's same case in Greece, same case in Kosovo, especially regarding the Vetevendosje movement, which is, like, now the main oppositional political force. So, and that's where the violence is targeted. In our case, mostly in case of most of the rest of Yugoslavia, there's no such a connection between the social movement and the political party. So we end up being like every protest, every goddamn protest in Belgrade ends up in this kind of situation where you're not really sure whether you have to go home now or like what happens next. Like everyone kind of feels that there needs to be something else to be done, but like there's nothing that you kind of oppose, nothing real. There's no police line. There's nothing. Okay, and there's no idea of the next step. So there's this brutally painful ending of every May Day demonstration in Serbia with these like union bureaucrats promising like this is your last warning, like if you don't fulfill whatever, like it's just not real, it's bad theater, nothing else. Okay, why? I think that's because like we don't have a political force, like that's what we need to be focusing on in this point, because and I just want to quickly go back to the 7 demands that you've mentioned. I mean, being part of the group, I'm kind of I feel good that this approach resonates. Because as March 21, we're part of the 7 Demands coalition group, whatever it is, collective. Because I think like the whole of the analysis that we've been doing throughout years kind of needs to amount to a slogan, basically. So like if you don't have good slogans that resonate with the people, that resonate with the concrete experience, your analysis sucks. Like I don't know what you're doing, okay? So like this is what I think what we need to be testing, and I think that bypasses the whole question of we need to speak in this language or that language or this whole debate about left populism. I think we should put that thing aside. Like we need to formulate good slogans based on analysis of the current situation and put them out there. And if we have like good means, and I think like especially considering the younger generation, everyone's on social media and stuff. I mean, look at the Labour campaign. Like, yes. I mean, these are sort of stuff. So it's coming from below, but it's always being atomized. It's always like this guy has a good slogan, that woman has a good slogan, this group, you know, but there's no political center, which is, I think, the answer to this question that you posed of how you connect different struggles. We've had thousands and thousands of strikes and various struggles in Serbia since the beginning of 2000, but like everyone for their own. We don't have organization, we have like official trade union centrals and all that, but they're not doing the job. So I think that like forming a political force that also offers like a political, how to say it in English, like the explanation of the way things are. Like it just formulates a bloody slogan. Okay, I think that speaks to the. Yeah.
It's not easy. Yeah. So. Someone has a slogan.
I'm just trying to... there's a lot of stuff here now in the air, and we're all over the place in subjects and directions, but something especially stuck with me now that when you were saying about protests. And I have seen more than once in my years of work that people see protest as a goal, while it should be a tool. And it should be just one method of our work. And the feeling that we get when the protest is over is because of the fact that the protest was our goal. Going back to 2016, I'm not even going to talk about the right to the city when we were campaigning for 7 years. Protest was just like one of the things that we were doing. I think that going back to 2016, I remember very clearly that the main thing that we did was thinking about tactical approaches and always thinking about what the next step is. On the one hand, it was like, with whom should we form, and I can't emphasize this enough, this tactical approach, because we as NGOs have always been fed this story that we have to have a strategic approach and that we have to have a strategic plan and that we have to have evaluations and I don't know what. But I think the more importantly, because strategically looking, you have no idea in the current political context what's going to happen in the next 6 months or the next year. So I think that a strategic approach today is completely unsustainable. So I think that just thinking about what we did in 2016, we were in a meeting for 9 months. It's just to put it plainly and simply, we never left our meeting, but we were always thinking about what is the next step, what is the other side going to do, how do we foresee what they're going to do, how do we gain the trust of the public, how do we get our message heard, what are we going to do tomorrow? Is it a press conference? Do we chain ourselves to the ministry? Do we perform a sit-in? So it's just, I think that one of the solutions to this sort of lack of catharsis that we have after a huge event is that the event isn't over and you should already know what you're doing tomorrow and how you are using the social capital that has been, hopefully that has been accumulated during the planning of a protest or during getting your message across while you're in a protest. Because we're always talking about, yes, there's a lot of people on the protest, our message has been heard, but it's a long-term process. And how can I say it? You have to have commitment to be in the fight for years. And I'm not saying this because I want to sound really like I have this experience, I'm very smart, but because I learned it the hard way myself. When I think about what you said about the left not going out on the field and not helping, I don't know, people being evicted, I'm just thinking, okay, if we go out on the field and help people getting evicted, then no, but then what? Yeah, but okay, I'm just curious about what direction are you talking? Because okay, we can stand there and we can help in some, but what is our role? Are we thinking about is it our role to think about new innovative models and to break this what is this glue that's been going on for years? What? No, this is just in referring to, you know, when somebody says we should do this, I hear a lot of times that there's no question afterwards. Then what? What do we do then? You know? Something else, okay. So I'm sorry if I'm being incoherent, but there's so many stuff that's been said that I just wanted to sort of get in the conversation and, okay, thank you.
Is it all right? Okay, maybe I misunderstood you, but I think that on the example that you use, okay, we have going directly to help people not getting evicted, then yes, of course, we need to, think about new models for housing in the current context, and third, to push it as a political agenda. So basically, probably there is something else in that way, but I think that we didn't even do all of these threes in a way that we structured proper organization that will not be only based in Belgrade but in different cities that will then react to all of the cases and to really in that way develop and put it into the part of a political program that will go into the elections. So I think that we still need to work on all of these aspects.
Yeah, I just think, that we have to gain why we are supposed to do that, because then we are making the platform and they are giving us the time to tell them how to organize, how to achieve something, because you gain the trust in the sense of that you are willing to help them. you don't have resources, you don't have a shelter, you don't have money to give them, but you are there with them. So you're not position yourself somewhere else, criticizing the government, you know, why is that happening? So that's the platform, because you have to have a kind of ruthless conditions or bad conditions for the people that you deserve the time that you can proclaim some ideology to them which they will maybe accept or not. I mean, we have in history, probably in the Second World War, the partisans will never won if we are not gathered together against the fascism and having 4 years to proclaim the ideology of communism and so on and so on. I think we are not having war right now, so let's have something to help poor people gain the trust, and they maybe proclaim some kind of ways how to maybe defeat them or do something about it. So I mean, I don't see the other way, because they are, I know actually, like again leaning on the plenum and the riots in Bosnia, I am now thinking, you know, that I'm definitely sure that the plenums were pacifying the protests, actually, giving them a context, of course, but also what we achieved. Now from this position, I really don't know what we achieved. We didn't achieve anything except the disappointment of people who are saying now, okay, you plenumaši, or, you know, you disappointed those poor people. Nobody organized those protests in sense of they will be burning municipalities and something. That was like kind of just a rage of people. Okay, a group of pretty aggressive, whatever, young people who did that. But still, that was the only way when we get, as a people, we get attention from the authorities, and they were afraid. I don't think that in Bosnia, protest doesn't have any meaning at all right now. And protests are not happening since then. Because what? We had a protest, we burned the building, so what now? Nothing happened. So what do we do now? Just be quiet and suffer. So that's the situation right now. From the various reasons in Bosnia, you know, those political national parties stuck with their voters and so on and so on. It's very hard to change that political situation right now, but protests are not happening, and related to that, you know, like now we are in protest in Belgrade, there is no police. Why is there is no police? Because they are aware of that nothing will happen. If they were starting to be kind of aggressive, then they will bring the, you know, police to protect whatever they're supposed to protect. So that's, I know, you know, like, so they are always, we are organizing peaceful protests. So when you're organizing peaceful protests, okay, you are backing yourself up that nobody will accuse you that you are organizing violent protests, but who knows, you know, what will happen. We can't control it.
Actually, maybe this is a good slogan. Yeah. Come to a violent protest.
Yes. You can't say it. You know, like
maybe it will be a success. Yeah, I think, again, the problem of violence. There is structure, there's a regime violence, but then there is also the problem of fire and how to play with the fire like we experienced in Bosnia. And we thought that by turning this energy into plenums, we're going to keep the fire alive, but there we were wrong. On the other hand, we were all afraid that the fire will just spread and might become quite dangerous.
Just a second. I propose to add one rule to what Igor explained at the beginning. It's, you know, the Fight Club rule. If it's your first plenum, you must speak.
I think we are running about the same questioning. some time or another. And the question is the form and the goals. I mean, plenum is just one form, demonstration is just one form. So if you, sometimes the trap is you make confusion between form and reality, not reality, but you know, the aim of demonstration is a demonstration, etc., etc. Because, well, I mean, there's a lot of different things about complexity. I mean, people who are involved in a movement have to believe this movement, have to believe that the construction, so for them a construction, but sometimes it could be an illusion. Because there was a question this morning, failure, success, which level, and so on. And these kind of questions are always working in different directions. So I think for me, it's the question that has to be precise is, does it a dynamic? And this dynamic is still alive. And what is what are we searching? What we want to achieve, and so on? Because if you agree with what he was saying, but for me, it's a kind of small defeat or small failure that we couldn't find the way how to progress in our lives. About the violence and violence of state, it's a question very difficult to manage, because I was believing in violence, you know, more or less. Now I think, I mean, I don't know, the culture of peace, I don't know, I'm not a specialist, but Florent could more explain about this. I think was a lot of massive movement, more strong in deeply action than violence. But the violence of the power is also something very different of the situation. It depends on the country. If it could be that Serbia actually today, the power don't think they're really in danger. But in other countries like Turkey, Russia, I mean, the protests are coming directly in the core of power. And so the answer is a level of violence which is not, well, so I have no answer in my I'm thinking I'm more in the questioning process, questioning ways, and so, but I don't know how to explain it. I mean, we have to always to be in a dynamic way, dynamic questioning, dynamic sense. I mean, at each time we stop something, we felt this. The plenum closed something, and we couldn't help somebody, and so on. Each time, it's a false thinking of weakness, to my point of view, because the reality always pushing us, and then we have to concentrate our strengths, strengths. Mm-hmm. So we have to also same question between movement and party. Just to have to be clear what is the reality and what we can choose, make pressure and so on. And we have to think always this, because I mean it does help us to make this, well, okay, we fail, we lose this, etc. Well, I don't know if I'm clear, but sorry for this.
Okay, so are there any other comments? If there are none, then we should call a break. So 10-minute break, and then we all come back for just concluding words. Okay? Thank you all for that.
Thank you.
Okay. Actually, this will be a very short statement that leads to a question, because what comes to my mind here, and it was sort of, I think, sort of symptomatic and strange from a perspective of someone who comes from Poland, so from a country where the leftists and also liberals, but also the leftists, were focused very much, like since at least mid-90s, were focused on the question of European integration. And no one here during this plenum mentioned either the word Europe or European Union. I think so. Maybe I missed something, but it seems I haven't. So So actually my question, so that's the statement, no one mentioned that. And my question is that symptomatic, does it mean anything, or is it just an accidental phenomenon? Because does it mean, or to put it simply, does it mean that Europe and the European Union is a lost cause for the left in the Balkans? Or maybe you believe that Balkans are the lost cause for Europe? So what's the reason why you seem not to be interested very much in Europe? Because for leftists and for liberals in Poland, in Central Europe, like in Czech, in Hungary, in Slovakia, I think they would start and they would end with the European Union in some context. Also critical one, but nevertheless, this would be a notion, a point of reference. And here I missed it. So my question to you is, why is that so? Thank you.
Good. And just before Mattia talks again, because he's good at expressing himself in public, maybe some people who are a bit more shy, I will give you the floor, and don't worry, there is no censorship, can also make a statement, a question, a provocation, whatever you feel like.
But it's totally...
It's okay. I think
it's not really in the subject, but indeed I was wondering why we, and I am inside the group, the women didn't speak, because I saw yesterday and this morning that so many strong women were here, very active, very vocal, and then in the group there's a lot of silence, so I was wondering why.
Someone else? You know, in the end, Mattia will speak.
No, it's not about answers. It's
a very brief answer to a very complex question. I think that for decades now we have been developing the answer to why women don't speak in public or don't speak enough in public. And it can't be said in a very short, but what is happening?
for the EU.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the matter of social construction and social, as we all know. But we hope for the better now. When you say there were many strong women here, then that will point to a much better future. Thank you.
Strong women? No. Now confirming the...
Yeah, sorry. I'm not an activist, actually. I'm a journalist, so I shouldn't intervene in this, but I will turn my wish into a question, so it's legitimate. I'm reporting about the Balkans since now 3 years, and I'm seeing a lot of nice initiatives in Croatia, Serbia. Most of them are linked to the city, to urban issues, to islands. They participate in local elections. They sometimes go national, but not very often. But this is a tiny part of my work, because the rest is, of course, diplomatic notes of protest, nationalism, the politics. So my question is, this final plenum was about what should be done. And the title is Times of Resistance. Wouldn't it be an act of resistance already if at the next protest of Ne davimo Belgrade there would be the flag of Zagreb, and if we would see the yellow duck in Zagreb city center, or if the girls from Banja Luka could count on the support of people coming from Belgrade? Because if this is resistance, and a big thing here is nationalism, wouldn't that support being already an act of resistance?
Okay, I don't know what I say because I'm young and I come here to learn about situation, how I work when I back to Banja Luka and how we connect and support each other and because I'm here, and I want to say that I'm also a feminist, an activist and journalist. For me it's important, we in this conference, we don't speak, maybe I'm not to listen, about women's rights in this, and it's reproductive rights and or women about. For me it's important when we have a Poland activist, and I don't know what happened in Greece or France or England about women's rights, and I want to, or Croatia, because Croatia have a similar situation like Poland, and I want to hear what this context, and I want maybe later I want maybe share some experience for activity in Banja Luka, because I don't know how you're informed about situation in Banja Luka and Republic Srpska about human rights and political situation in our entity. It's all. If you have question, you can.
So we will have Mattia and Robert, who already spoke before. Someone else? I'm trying to push for, you know, the people who were silent to express themselves, but I'm not censoring you. Just write on your end the thing you want to. So, Iphigenia, you want to say something? No? Someone else? No? Okay, so then Mattia and Robert, and then we will try again.
Okay, thanks. I fully support the method. Yeah, full support. As far as the conferences go, I think that it's usually mostly relevant for us to usually get to know each other. For me personally, I mean, coffee breaks are usually better and more useful than this formal part, even though, of course, it's obviously important and we get to know a lot of stuff. But actually, since we're approaching everything from the activist perspective and from the internationalist perspective, it's very important for us to actually connect in informal ways. So yeah, I think that's a pretty good success of our today gathering. On the other hand, addressing the issue of left on the Balkans and the EU, I would strongly propose a strong opposition to joining the EU from on the part of the left-wing countries which still hasn't joined. I think that, well, apart from all the obvious issues with this corrupt bureaucratic organization that brutalized the people of Greece in the past couple of years, just to name one thing, and who is permanently brutalizing the refugees, to name the other, like the two probably most important political issues in EU for the past couple of years. I think that we need, in the context of Brexits, of various attempts on exits of the EU, an alternative project that is truly internationalist from below. And on the Balkans, where we are constantly facing the issue of both, this twin issue of nationalism and imperialism, I think that the project of building a Balkan Federation is something that can provide this sort of transitional kind of format of organizing and thinking, strategically thinking in terms of regional activities. And in that sense, these types of conferences are, I think very useful. And just to possibly abuse this microphone right now. Like in 15 minutes, my organization is hosting a discussion about this new law against sorry, no, not that one. This is concerning the issue of women's liberation. The new law which is forbidding catcalling and those kinds of practices, and it's been highly controversial in Serbia, like sexual harassment, verbal harassment of women. So we're hosting a discussion which is like nearby. So everyone who wants to join me, I'll go straight away from this place. It will be in Serbo-Croatian. But so like, yeah, whoever wants to continue discussing this question can join me. Thanks.
Okay, just short reflection on Mikhail's and Giovanni's questions, comments. So basically, I will not speak about the EU and the Balkans as such. I'm just want to my personal opinion. I also have very ambiguous relations towards EU, and I would like to see more and more meetings, conferences where we would actually have a proper discussion about the integration into the EU or EU that is out of that, let's speak about the chapters and everything issues. So, and relating to support between different actions in Zagreb, Banja Luka, Belgrade, I'm totally I'm agreeing that that's not something that that is something that is possible and that already even exists, at least at the level of those that are organizing protests. So basically, 2 years ago, on the protest of Nedavimo Belgrade, Enes Čerimagić from initiative Srđ Naš from Small Dubrovnik initiative was one of the speakers at the protest. So I would actually like to see flags of different initiatives from Yugoslavia on any protest, whether it's in Belgrade, Zagreb, Sarajevo, Banja Luka. So there's that.
I forgot to say that I'm activist in a non-government organization, Sharp Zero. If you want research, you can ashtanula.org and you find more information about our organization. And I want to say about solidarity in Banja Luka. Before 4 years ago, we have a protest with Pizin Park. I know didn't all know about this situation, but we have support from activists and people in an organization from Sarajevo, Tuzla, Mostar, Belgrade, Zagreb, and also we have international support about people who take a photo with messages, its park is our, and share with us. And we all also support the initiative or organization or some activity. Activists from region or ex-Yugoslavia, because when we give support each other, we are strong.
So any final thoughts? Yeah, you go ahead.
We were very surprised in Romania when this winter the Bulgarians show solidarity with us on our protests and on our cause. And last year, we had 3 international solidarity action, one with women in Poland against abortion, the abortion law, one with Turkey, and one with Hungarian on the CU subject. But we have no contacts in international press to promote our solidarity action. We engage like 300 people on our action, and I think that it could be better. It would be better if we, I don't know, if we build a network to share our action and to promote, and if in a country is happening a protest, to have a banner or a flash mob or something to show that we are together and we support each other on promoting our values.
Very good. Anyone else impressions of these 2 days discussions? Something you want to share with us, with everyone else?
You know, it's like the scene in the American movie at the wedding, speak now or remain silent forever.
Do we notice that we are talking in the past time? We had. We are talking in the past tense. And this is some kind of remark. But we have to make some conclusion for aujourd'hui.
For the future.
For the future. And that's what
so
was,
we
was,
will.
It was, so we have to do that. We have some.
So if not, I would then ask Florent to give us a final conclusion open to the future.
Yes, I will first talk about the past, which was 6 months ago. You know, it's not the deep past. When in Paris with Emmanuel and Clémence, we started this discussion with CZKD, with Borka, Alexandra and Lola about this crazy idea. And what if we bring all these people that we don't really know, that are doing these things that we don't really understand, to just talk together about what we are doing? That was basically how we introduced it. Then, of course, CZKD put all its intelligence to improve the idea, and that's how we ended up with this conference, with this idea that we should consider what is happening in these different countries, and the activists, the people participating, organizing, struggling for that, and try to make connections. We had this heavy program, but I think for me it was was fascinating. Yesterday it was so interesting. Even if we did not have enough time, we should have cut half the people to have enough time, but then if you cut half the people, it's half less interesting. So let's put everyone in it. And we continued with this working group, with this first plenum attempt. I must say I have this experience of the social forums, the World Social Forums, European Social Forums, and maybe you have also, some of you, this experience of the assembly of social movements at the end. This is so much more interesting what we managed to do here. But still, we don't know each other. We come from many different directions, so many different goals. So, yeah, discussion is, of course, all over the place. It cannot be otherwise. It would be very strange if it's not like that. But the idea is that now that connections have been established, or for others simply it's one more step in the usual connections you have, because we see also there is a different kind of level. We should try to continue this process, because it has to be a process. If it's just one meeting, even the most perfect meeting never changed the situation, because it's just one event. And you all know that. I'm sorry, sometimes I just listen to myself talking, so you throw me stones or I don't know what. But you all know how a process is the way forward, and we should really strive to make it a process. So we already are trying this effort. In France, at the end of August, there will be a European meeting. It's the the Summer University of European Social Movements, the official title, something like that. It's organized by ATTAC movement. Maybe you know these are the anti-finance NGOs. They are very strong in France, in Germany, in Spain, and exist in other countries. And we will have a session of this Times of Resistance, again organized together with CZKD. We want to organize, to invite some people to continue the discussion and to continue to spread information, to give opportunities for connections for future solidarities. And what my concluding words would be, each of you in your different city, different country, different context, you have now a very nice booklet that I've lost, but you have it somewhere with all the nice pictures and the emails and the people who are connected with movements, with activities, and you can talk to them, talk to other, and they know other people. Just consider how you can include some of them in some future activities in this spirit of developing the networking, developing the personal connections, helping to develop the future solidarities. Of course, it doesn't mean that you have to invite the same people. Maybe we forgot very important countries. Our friends from Kosovo could not come because we have the election, for instance. Maybe you know also very interesting groups that you don't know, whatever, but it should be an effort of all of us to try to develop these international connections to build the possibility for the international solidarity. That's what we try to do here. Thank you really to each and every one of you to spend the time, the energy, to come, to prepare, to talk, to listen, which is sometimes so tough, but we all did it. And let's just try all together to, in all our different ways and specific context, to push forward this movement that we did not create. So many people are trying to do the same, but let's bring our positive contribution for change in the current situation we live now.
Thank you very much, Florent. You said this is your first plenum, so usually plenum votes on something. So this is where things might not always go according to the plan. So I'm proposing to this plenum to vote on the following question. So this is how you get the immediate feedback. Was this a good conference? There's no, you can remain neutral, and yes. So who says no? Okay, 0. Who is neutral? You don't know, was it a good or bad? Who says yes? Are you neutral? Why neutral? Who says yes? By large majority, we agree this was a good conference. Thank you, Florent.
Yeah, we need more votes. So I vote that we... Okay, let's have another vote. Okay, who thinks that CZKD is such a cool place? Yes, raise your hand. It's enough. We are at the end of our energies. So, what do we have planned for tonight? I have no idea. Clémence, Boy, Alexandre. So you have freedom tonight. Everyone is free.